Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Long Night in the Valley by Maraleus. Chapter 15. Toshinori pushed himself up off the ground with trembling arms, although by the position of the sun it hadn't been for long. He blacked out when... "Oh no!" said Toshinori. His head throbbed at the sound, making the edges of his vision go dark and fuzzy. When All for One had broken through into the shared mindscape. "Oh no," he repeated. Where was Izuku? He had to find... Oh, thank goodness! Izuku was right there. He let out a sigh of relief. His relief was short-lived. Izuku, to put it lightly, did not look well. His eyes were open, but only glazed slivers. His breath was coming shallow and fast, not quite to the point of hyperventilating, but it was a close thing. His skin was pale, except for deep, bruise-like circles under his eyes. He was sweating more than Toshinori had ever seen him sweat, which was really something. Izuku broke out into nervous sweats with some frequency. Perhaps most concerningly, he was shaking like a leaf. Izuku was, Toshinori realized, still maintaining the effects of Chu's quirk. He tried to reach inside himself, contact his predecessor, but swiftly pulled his mental fingers back as if they had been burned. Bad idea. "Young Midoriya," he said. "Can you hear me?" Izuku made a small, pained noise that tore at Toshinori's heart. "I'm going to pick you up, okay?" he said. Izuku didn't answer, but then Toshinori didn't expect him to. The simple act forced Toshinori to call on the embers of One for All, not enough to make his muscles swell, but enough to give him the strength of an ordinary, healthy man. His muscles and his remaining intact lung screamed in protest, not to mention his scars. He ignored them. He stumbled forward, priorities shuffling themselves. They'd been trying to escape, but if Izuku was this ill, he needed a doctor. An exorcist might be a good idea too, with All for One running around in their heads. But to get to a doctor, they'd have to put themselves in commission hands, and Toshinori could feel the echoes of 2 and 3 telling him exactly how stupid that would be. The commission had sent hawks after Izuku. Toshinori had no doubt they'd throw him in Tartarus, and the treatment of criminals in Tartarus was the one of the few things Toshinori had publicly disagreed with the HPSC on in his hero persona. Not that it had gone anywhere. He simply hadn't had the time to really push it, and the commission had somehow managed to paint him as somehow too good, too forgiving, to be trusted when it came to the disposition of terrible villains. "I'll be okay," mumbled Izuku, the sentiment clearer over the mental link. "No hospital." "Okay," said Toshinori, slightly breathless. Let's keep going then. Find a good place to camp out, far away from Todoroki Toya. Here, yep." He was aware he was rambling, and needlessly at that, but he couldn't help it. One foot in front of the other. Was that a car running? Toshinori, keen on getting help and care for Izuku, even if it meant hijacking a car, change direction slightly. Of course, it would be ideal if there were friendly bystanders who didn't believe the Hero Commission's lies and had a medical license and a healing quirk. But Toshinori would be more than happy with... He stopped, laughed some more, a little hysterically at that. There, abandoned in a ditch like a beached sailing ship, was Vladiking's much abused car. Sure, it would have been reported stolen by now, and police and heroes would be looking for it. But that was a problem for future Toshinori. Present Toshinori, on the other hand, was simply grateful for the windfall, and wary. The presence of the car could indicate the proximity of the League of Villains. He gently put Izuku down in the seat, turned the car off, and made sure it was in the appropriate gear, then walked around to the back of the car and lifted it out of the ditch. If his muscles had been complaining before, he staggered back into the driver's seat, leaning heavily on the side of the car the whole time. Blood dripped from his mouth. This is nothing, my boy, nothing, he said in what he hoped was a reassuring tone, as he felt Izuku's concern press heavily against him. You used to have to do worse every day of the week. Toshinori got the sense that Izuku was not in fact reassured. Nevertheless, he grinned, pouring every drop of his fabled everything will be alright smile into the expression. Even if Izuku couldn't see it, Toshinori needed some comfort that came with donning the familiar mask. Let's see if we can get to the wild pussycats today, after all. Eri-chan, began Abe, tapping together her papers. She'd drawn the short stick. Ito was interviewing one of the older students, and Abe got the feral child. No, said Eri. I didn't even ask you a question yet. Only people I like get to call me Chan. That's the rule. Principal Nezu said so. Principal, corrected Nezu, cheerfully, like the unhelpful rodent rat bastard he was. If only she could have gotten him kicked out. But no, he and Prison Mike were both sitting in on the interview. Principal, Nezu told me, and he's in charge. You tell them, Eri-chan, said Prison Mike, just a little more loudly than what was comfortable. Eri nodded to let Prison Mike know the noise-cancelling earplugs were working. In this situation, said Abe sternly, I am in charge. The girl tilted her head, and suddenly her expression went from pouting child to superior being contemplating an uppity insect. Eri-san, began Abe. No, said Eri. Abe looked up incredulously. What was wrong with San? She decided to ignore it. You spoke with... Eri began to scream like a tea kettle whistling. Can't you control her? Abe demanded, turning to Nezu, who chittered. This is very good progress, he said, barely loud enough to hear over the ongoing shriek. Before now, Eri-chan was too hesitant to act out or misbehave in any way, fearing the punishment that her former and completely unqualified caretakers would have inflicted upon her. Abe didn't know which was more long-winded, the still screaming child or the rodent principal. Her body was so tiny. How was she still screaming? Eri clicked off the present mic-themed combo audio recorder and player in her pocket at the same time. She shut her mouth. Principal Nezu was right. This was fun. At least it would be if Deku was here. "I get to pick what you call me," said Eri patiently, since this person wasn't smart enough to see that Deku was only the best hero ever, and not a bad guy. She'd have to explain slowly. The person evidently wasn't even smart enough to breathe, as she slowly started turning purple. "What?" she said in a stilted tone. "Would you like me to call you?" Eri let the smile Aizawa had taught her spread across her face. "Eri-sama." "Is that a joke?" "It's very important to respect the boundaries children establish, Abe-san," said Nezu. Katsuki blinked. It was about time he woke up. Stupid dream time dilation or whatever. Stupid boring soy sauce face and his stupid boring mindscape, dreamscape, whatever hellscape. There was a limit to what you could do in a square mile that mostly consisted of a tape-covered jungle gym and a boring apartment building. Katsuki had found it, and after spending a good period of time being angry about it, had decided to go to sleep. Dream time dilation, or whatever the commission proctor had been going on about after the first 1,000,000,001 stupid hour, it didn't matter. Katsuki hated it. It was taking too damn long. If he didn't have to do this stupid training to keep his provisional license, he'd tell the commission to shove this stupid pointless training up its... About a minute after he should have twigged to something wrong, Katsuki realized the ceiling was too familiar. He sat up. Why the hell was he in UA's infirmary? And not just him. About half the class was here with him. He scowled. So something had gone wrong with the test after all, and it looked like Deku wasn't involved. Stupid nerd could hold it over him. "Hey!" shouted Katsuki, spotting Recovery Girl. "What the language!" scolded Recovery Girl, shrilly, practically teleporting across the room to jab Katsuki with her cane. "You're in a school, young man." "I know that," protested Katsuki. "But why the he faltered under the force of Recovery Girl's gaze, even as she started to run through the checklist she usually did for people who'd been knocked out like wimps. "Fudge, am I here?" "I think the more pertinent question is, how are you awake? There should be at least 1 more hour, if not 2, left to that quirk." "I went to sleep," said Katsuki, attempting to fend her off. "Well, you wouldn't be waking up if..." "No, in the stupid dreamscape thing, I went to sleep." Recovery Girl paused for a moment, then sighed. "I don't suppose you were the one whose mind they were exploring." "No, that was Soy Sauce Face. Why are we back here? Where's the nerd?" Recovery Girl seemed to droop at this question, and the heaviness filled the air. "That's a long story." "Did we get attacked by Dusty McGee again?" "No." "So what happened?" snapped Katsuki. "The nerd break out a new quirk in the middle of the training or something?" Recovery Girl's eye twitched, and she sat down on a nearby stool, taking a deep breath. "The Hero Commission suspected Midoriya of working with the League of Villains and attempted to use the training to interrogate him. Under the influence of at least one mental quirk, Midoriya fled. At about the same time, All Might left and met up with him. after which the Commission accused Midoriya of kidnapping All Might. They haven't given him an S-rank villain classification, but I suspect that just because the paperwork hasn't gone through yet. Alright, honestly, with his creepy stalker notebooks and obsessive All Might shrine room, Deku probably seemed like a prime kidnapping suspect to an outsider. But considering that Katsuki had witnessed Deku and All Might's sickeningly sweet interpersonal interactions, somehow managing to be a goddamn third wheel to some sort of surrogate parent-child found family drama nonsense. Has anyone told them it's more likely to be the other way around? And if it was, it'll probably be for the nerd's own good too. Recovery Girl nodded tiredly. They hiding out here? Midori is a wanted criminal. So what? We're in a school. You've lost me. Recovery Girl sighed. No, Midoriya is not here. Well, that's stupid. What are we doing about it? Right now, you are doing nothing. Commission investigators are in the building, and it would be better if they thought you were still unconscious. Katsuki grumbled. Should go and try to bring him back. What? So he can be arrested? No, said Katsuki defensively. But he's probably running around out there making everything worse. Bakugo, said Recovery Girl, patting his leg. From what I've heard, the only thing that could possibly make this worse is being found. Can you describe to me the circumstances under which you lost your quirk? Asked Ito, the other commission investigator. Sure, said Mirio, hoping the man couldn't detect his discomfort at the subject, even if he made that split-second decision to shield Eri from his body with full knowledge of the consequences, to jump in front of Nemoto's bullet. It was still a traumatic experience. It still hurt, even if he didn't regret it. He took a deep breath. Well, it was during the Shie Hasakai raid. I had gone ahead to confront Chisaki Kai and rescue Eri. There were a few other Yakuza with him, members of the 8 Bullets, Numoto Shin, Sakaki Didoro, and, Chrono, I think. But I can't remember his proper name. That's fine. Please continue. I engaged with Sakaki and Numoto, while Chisaki and Chrono went ahead. I was affected by their quirks, but managed to get by. It was a hard battle. He interjected. Suddenly, he belatedly realized he wanted to draw out this line of questioning, and dove into a supremely detailed description of his fight with Sakaki and Nemoto. It was funny too, and he saw Ito getting sucked in. Sir would have been proud. And then I chased after Chrono and Chisaki, said Mirio, gesticulating wildly to illustrate his movements. He continued narrating the battle, the wild swings of fate, Eri's hope and fear, the strikes and counter-strikes, just like when he'd first debriefed after the raid. Weirdly enough, going through it like this also made him feel better. Less like he was reliving a terrible, painful moment in his life, and more like he was telling a very dramatic story. And, he wrapped up, Chisaki tossed the gun with the erasure bullet to Nemoto. I hadn't realized he was still conscious. I'd been too worried about getting to Eri. I got shot. Despite your quirk, I didn't want Eri to get hit. Even though the loss of her quirk might have been a blessing for her, considering the difficulty she has using it and the pain it gives her. Mirio felt his smile settle into something blander and more dangerous than his usual beaming grins. Are you saying that I should have let a 6-year-old be shot? Not at all. Not at all, said Ito, making a mark. Now, where was Midoriya at this time? He hadn't caught up to us yet, said Mirio. He was with Sir... Who? Sir Night-Eye, clarified Mirio. Before that, they were with Rocklock and some of the others, I believe. But you wouldn't know for sure. I wasn't there, so no, not really. But the exact situation should be on file from our debrief, and Rocklock can confirm or clarify. Only the parts he saw, said Ito. Did you try to use your quirk after that, or did he simply assume it was gone? Of course I tried to use it, said Mirio, feeling somewhat offended. I had trained it to be reflexive. Right after, I kept thinking my quirk would protect me, and moving too slow to dodge attacks, I got really beaten up. And was this before or after Midoriya Izuku arrived? Before, mostly, said Mirio. It isn't like the fight stopped the minute he showed up. And you certain your quirk stopped working before Midoriya arrived? I'm sure. How did you know you were hit by a permanent quirk erasing bullet? Asked Ito. Well, when my quirk didn't come back, we were pretty sure, said Mirio. But you didn't know beforehand for certain that the bullets were permanent. Crap. Mirio screwed up somewhere in there. He could feel it. I think Nemoto and Chisaki were shouting at each other about it during the fight, said Mirio. They were pretty proud of it. But you did not know for sure that your quirk loss was permanent, insisted Ito. There was no way for you to know that their claims about the bullets were true. I mean, not really, said Mirio. But again, here I am without a quirk. Yes, but that isn't the only way a person can lose a quirk, is it? The Scorcher Camino was already in Tartarus when the Shiai Hisakai raid took place, said Mirio. I'm not sure what you're getting at. Did Midoriya Izuku come in contact with you before the end of the day? We talked, yeah, said Mirio. Physical contact. Actually, no, said Mirio. After the fight, we were both whisked away to the hospital, separately. Midoriya came to visit me after we both got patched up. He felt guilty about not getting to me and Eri sooner, and, oh dear, he'd have to think back on that conversation a bit more. Later he swallowed. And Sir's death. He looked down at his hands. Sir, in retrospect, he didn't like Midoriya very much, and his death hit Midoriya hard. First death in the line of duty. It was the first time I'd seen a hero die, too. You're quite certain he didn't touch you at all? Asked Ito, undeterred by Mirio's not at all feigned grief. Pretty sure, yeah, said Mirio, now annoyed by the investigator's callousness. I see. Ochaka rubbed her eyes, but the darkness stayed. What? She said out loud, her voice somehow doing the opposite of echoing. What happened? I don't know, said Todoroki. He had positioned himself so as to guard her back. There was a bang, said Ito, and then... He trailed off, clearly finding just as much difficulty in describing the event as Ochako did thinking about it. They were talking about All for One getting in, said Ochako. You don't think... Maybe we timed out on the quirk and were about to wake up, said Ida optimistically. Where's Ozawa-sensei then? Asked Todoroki. I don't know, said Ochako. He was standing with us. I mean, I couldn't see you guys at first either. I'm here, said Aizawa. Ochako turned to see their teacher methodically scanning their black surroundings, his eyes red. "Do you know what happened?" she asked. "Do you think this is just, I don't know, a new transition? A memory?" "I don't know," said Aizawa. He blinked, eyes returning to their normal colors. "It isn't," said an unfamiliar voice. The figure of a young man with uncut white hair slowly faded out of darkness. "Hello," he raised a hand. "I'm One, or I guess you can call me Kazuki. Sorry about the landscape. Most of our mental resources were just rerouted." "Does this have something to do with that vault thing Izuku mentioned?" asked Ochako. "Yes, sadly. My brother's broken out, which means you really shouldn't be here. All our minds are about to become battlefields. I've some techniques that might help you get out, but Six told me that there was something taken from Midoriya that we could get back. If the vault was open, is that still a thing?" One raised a fist to his lips and pressed down. "You understand, don't you, that to search for this is to go into my brother's mind?" "If it's to help Midoriya," said Todoroki, stepping forward, "we'll do anything." "Well, that is very admirable of you," said One. "I do mean that. I really do, and have seen your heroics and spirit through Izuku's eyes. But I'm not sending children to fight my brother. Eraserhead, you'd have to go alone." "I can work with that." "But we won't be in any real danger," protested Ochako. "The worst that could happen to us is that we'll run out of time and wake up, right?" "Don't underestimate my brother. Judging from the fight at Camino, he lost a lot of quirk control and strength after his first fight with 8, or else he'd never have been captured. But that's only if we take it at face value. I don't doubt that he has 5 or 6 plans in place to escape Tartarus and steal every interesting quirk in there, thereby increasing his power exponentially, or even healing himself." Ochako blinked. How could anyone heal from... Wait. Overall, One's smile was a bitter thing. "I certainly wouldn't have put the two of them in the same prison. The villain at Camino, already strong enough to go toe-to-toe with All Might, with Overhaul's power." Ochako shuddered. "What did he take from Midoriya?" said Aizawa. "I'm going to need to know before I can do this." "You sure you want to do this, then?" "I haven't decided." One sighed and pushed his hair back out of his face. Ochako was struck momentarily by how the color of his eyes perfectly matched Izuku's. "My brother took what he always takes," said One. "His quirk." "But," protested Ochako, "he has a quirk. He has..." She trailed off as another revelation hit her. "He," said Ida next to her, "has several quirks." "He has your quirks," said Todoroki with 100% unwavering confidence. "You had a quirk like All for One," said Aizawa. "But considering what we've seen, the quirk to pass on quirks..." "That's why you call yourself by numbers, because that's the order you had the quirk in," added Ochako. "I prefer to think it as the ability to share quirks," said One. "But since everyone but 8 and 9 is dead, the distinction is academic." Aizawa sighed and ran a hand over his face. "Okay, let me get this straight. You and your brother both had meta quirks. He could give and take quirks. You could pass your own quirk on. He decided to become a criminal mastermind. You decided to, I don't know, invest your quirk until someone had enough quirks to fight your brother. And they're all related, said Todoroki. And you're all related, said Aizawa with an air of suffering. It was significantly less intentional and more complicated than that, but yes, those are the basics. And for some reason, All Might thought it was a good idea to pick a teenager for the job. In his defense, 8 thought my brother was dead. The one you should really be throwing shade at is 7. I have questions. 1 tilted his head. Normally, I would answer them, but we're running out of time. Aizawa sighed. Alright, I'll do it. We want to help too, said Ochako. 3 will find a way to ghost murder me if we get you involved in a fight with my brother. So would I, incidentally, said Aizawa. Then I would expel all of them. Ida cleared his throat. Is there any way for us to help without coming in contact with All for One? Yes, said one, clapping his hands together. Getting out before the Suzuki fella does, and giving Izuku some good publicity. One's image seemed to waver and split. Then, as if Ochako had crossed her eyes, she blinked hard, but after that there were still 2 of them. I'll lead you to my brother's mind, said one of the ones, waving at Aizawa. I'll stay here and try to help the rest of you get out, said the second one. We should... Oh, repeated Aizawa. Oh, what? Oh, we forgot about someone, said one. Oh, said All for One, catching sight of an anomaly. Who is this little intruder to our gathering space? Just a government lackey, said Miranda, hands still for now, but in a position where she could likely summon a ball of lightning in a matter of minutes. Not someone you can use as a hostage. Actually, said Ryuichi, who unusually had yet to disappear from All for One's senses. If you could figure out a way to get rid of him, it would be convenient. 2, snapped Nana. Come on, we were all thinking it, said Ryuichi. You can't use him as a murder weapon, hissed Nana. 9 will get in trouble. You're the one who repeatedly dropped him from a dozen stories up, and the one who was fantasizing about murdering him in real life. That daydream could have belonged to anyone. It had Gran Torino in it. 8 knows Gran too. All for One coughed, returning the full attention of the vestiges to himself. Is this a pathetic attempt at a distraction? Do you know any other adjectives? Asked his little brother, who was slouching off to the side with his hands in his pockets. All for One sneered. Are you not even taking this seriously? Not really, no, Kazuki. And neither are you, or else we'd be fighting already. We both know that what you can affect here is limited. He started counting off on his fingers. You can't bring us back with you. You can't affect 9's morality. You can't take the stockpile. I knew it! Shrieked the little intruder, jabbing a finger at All for One. I knew it! You're All for One. Midoriya is working for you. Hey, if you're going to do the sibling thing and prove me wrong about the whole can't do anything thing, can you suggest starting with him? All for One narrowed his eyes and scanned his relatives. Uncharacteristic lack of protest. Are you briar patching? No, said Hibiki. They're quite serious. I personally would prefer it if you didn't kill him, but not enough to risk myself. He could always trust Hibiki to be blunt and straightforward. he got it from his wonderfully forthright and businesslike mother. He hadn't loved her like he loved his current, still living spouse, but she had been refreshing. "Mood," said Rikuya. "I wasn't going to say anything," said dear sweet Izuku, raising a hand. "But I'm not actually comfortable with letting All For One kill him in front of us." "Don't try that now. You've shown your true colors, traitor." "Don't worry, kid," said Daiguro. "We're pretty sure he won't be able to." "Torture, then?" "Not sure we can do worse than Nana did." "All I did was drop him," protested Nana. "Repeatedly from a great height," Miranda reminded her. Everyone was much more relaxed now, and were they ignoring him? They were. "Are you all under the effect of a quirk?" said All For One. "Yeah," said Kazuki. "How else do you think this is happening?" "No, I mean, your personalities. They're all..." He gestured at the One For All users who had stopped to watch him. "Nii-chan, I've tried to tell you this before, but at least from me, I'm not all that a great person. You just suck so enormously that I look like a saint in comparison." "That is not true," quipped All For One. "It is," said Kazuki. "I mean, think back to our first argument. I was less concerned about your morality and more concerned with the fact the Demon King always loses. Excuse you, but I've beaten every one of you." "No, you haven't," said Hibiki. "I, at least, died from no input from you." "Killing you is obviously different from beating you," said All For One. "I mean, by the time you chucked me in that vault, it had evolved to a moral and ethical complaint," said Kazuki, his one visible eye unfocused in remembrance. "But it started out with me worried about you getting yourself killed." "No, it didn't." "It really did. You know, I don't think I ever told you this, but if you had been 20% more ethical, I would have absolutely been on your side." "What?" "I mean, it was you, the government, and the ragtag resistance groups, and the government sucked." "I can confirm that," said Miranda, "and it continues to be disgustingly corrupt. But since you're also swimming through the human experimentation cesspit, we're staying where we are. Don't get any ideas." She ended the sentence with a hiss, and the fog started rolling in. "I agree, but if you stayed away from the kidnapping, murder, and cult stuff, I would have probably stayed with you," said Ryuichi. "Except you did do all of that stuff. Why are we even talking about this?" "I would add personal freedom to the list of things I'd want from you in the hypothetical world where we stayed on the same side," said Hibiki. "But otherwise, I agree." All For One blinked several times, a small part of his mind cherishing the fact that he had eyes. "Do you all feel that way?" he asked, oddly touched but also strangely disturbed. "No," said Daiguro. "The rest of us hate you and the government just about equally." All For One turned his gaze to the quivering government lackey. "I see. So I suppose I had the government to thank for this turn of events. What did you do to have these soft-hearted fools so upset with you?" The little man squeaked and jabbed something like an EpiPen into his leg. A second later, he vanished. "Wait," said Izuku. "Wait, that's how you get out? That's so stupid. Can we do that?" The last was said as an aside to Nana. "Not with him here," said Miranda. Her voice dropped back into its more dangerous register. "Oh, we are going to fight after all," said All For One, clapping his hands and smiling. "What fun!" "I can't believe you distracted him and got Suzuki to leave like that," said Aizawa as he stepped out of the fog. Well, my brother always did like to hear the sound of his own voice, and to be a jerk. I'm sure that was obvious, said one. They came to the front of a normal-looking apartment building. One sighed. This is where we lived, he said. Before... He sighed again. Aizawa examined one out of the corner of his eyes. He looked tired. How much of what you said back there was true? Oh, most of it really. My successes built me up as some kind of big good, but I was never anything but a normal guy with a slightly more functional moral compass than my brother. From what Aizawa had seen so far, he suspected one was seriously underselling himself. I'm sorry, said one, but I'm going to have to leave you here. Nine's quirk should look like a younger version of himself. He couldn't have been older than 5 when it was taken. Anything else I should know? Sorry, not really. I've not exactly been inside my brother's head. If you manage to find a switch labelled empathy, you might take a second to flip it on. Or not. Could be a booby trap. Wouldn't put it past him. Great. Midoriya-san, said Mr. Compress. We've been searching for quite some time now. I hate to say it, but I rather suspect your son has thoroughly escaped. Escaped? Repeated Midoriya. Like a prisoner? Mr. Compress coughed into his fist. Tomura glared at him through the fog of exhaustion. He was wearing a mask. Why bother with a fist? Sometimes Tomura felt like the only sane person on a planet of aliens. Honestly, we didn't even know he was in the area, Midoriya-san. But perhaps at this point, the best course of action will be return to our, temporary base so that you can get some clothes. I'm sure Darby will have something that can fit you. Or maybe, said Toga hesitantly, Magni might have had something. Ah, excellent idea, Himiko. Yes, I'm sure Magni's clothes will be much more appropriate. I don't know that dressing her in a dead woman's clothes is a good idea, whispered Twice. Normally, said Midoriya Inko, I would say that the fires of my angers at Hisashi provide me with enough warmth to scorch the ground I walk on, but... She shivered. Unfortunately, you may be right. I'm not a young woman anymore, and Izuku would want me to be safe and healthy, so that I can give Hisashi a... firm talking to. Tomura shuddered. The ice in her tone was more frigid than the toilet seat in the stupid unheated bathroom at night. He hoped Sensei didn't get a mind-reading quirk in the near future. He didn't want him to know about that metaphor. Markia, will you be a dear and take us back? And Mr. Compress, would you put Dr. Garaki back in one of your marbles? I suspect he'll be more comfortable that way. At least Tomura wasn't the doctor. Markia leaned down to let them get on, though not before fixing Tomura with a glare and delivering some glitchy threat about the little lord and playing nice. Completely redundant, what with Midoriya Inko much more permanent and detailed threat regarding the same thing. Hey, said Twice. Do you guys smell... It's like a barbecue. Himiko sniffed the air. It does smell kinda smoky, guys. Do you think Darby got in a fight too? With who? Asked Tomura. Well, Izuku-chan has to be still around here somewhere, right? Said Himiko, putting a finger to her lips. Markia sped up. It's probably just the wind blowing someone's bonfire smoke this way. Markia slowed down again. Tomura frowned. There shouldn't be anyone close enough for that, he said. If Darby had set the forest on fire and given away their position, he was going to murder him. Markia sped up. They came into the sight of their current base and the source of the smoke. These happened to be the same thing. I'm gonna kill Darby, said Tomura. Are we sure it was him? Asked Weiss. I don't care. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a longer chapter than the last two previous ones. They were quite shorter, like in the 30-35 region. This is, I'm pretty sure, going to be in the 40-50 region. But yeah, it was a long chapter. A lot of things happening. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun story so far. I like the bickering between All for One and the Vestiges. It sounds something like a sibling, like a family talk. It sounds like something a family would say, like discuss and talk between. Not the morality part, like as in the bickering part, because bickering happens a lot. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye.